Today we are going to discuss the remaining portion of JDBC. Okay, and this will be the last class of JDBC. Okay, uh, we have already discussed how to write a simple connection pool, but in general we won't depend upon the third. We won't depend upon our own code to implement the connection pooling. We depend upon third-party libraries. Okay, one of such third-party libraries. Okay, the prominently used the third-party libraries for JDBC connection pooling and connection management and the transaction management is C3 PO P0. Actually, it is 0 because it is O, and we use DBCP, which is developed by Apache. DBCP is being developed by Apache Foundation. I am not sure who developed C3PO. These are the two prominently used third-party libraries to maintain connection pooling, to maintain connections, to maintain the transactions and all. Nowadays, the mostly used one is C3PO. Nowadays, the mostly used one is C3PO only. Okay. Now let me show you a very simple example how we can make use of C3PO to get the connection object, to maintain the connection pooling. Okay. Now just to make use of C3PO, we need to update it in the class path. Let me update the C3PO library in the class path. Just let me copy this location and let me paste in the class path. Properties, advanced system settings, environmental variables. Just let me delete the existing class path and paste even the current jar file, which is C3PO jar file. Okay, now let me go for the command. Let me see what is the package structure of 3PO. Com exchange v2 3PO combo fold data source. Com exchange v2 C3PO. This is the package structure. Com dot mexchange dot v2 dot c3po c3p0 dot, there is a slash combo pool data source. Okay, this is a comparable data source is a class which is used. Okay, any data source in the library, any data source, whether it is a third party data source or the data sources that are inbuilt in the application. Okay, if we see the JDK libraries in the lib, in the JRE lib, we have rt.jar. Inside rt.jar we have java.sql package which is used to interact with the database. Okay, and this no java yes, all the data sources are specialized entities to javax.sql.data source. Okay, all the data sources are specialized entities to javax.sql.data source. Any data source, whether it is a third party data source, whatever the third party data source it might be, all the data sources are subclasses to javax.sql.data source, which is the interface. All the data sources are subclasses or specialized entities to javax.sql.data sources, which is the interface. Data source is a interface. And comparable data source is a class which is implementing data source interface. And it is a third party library, so that I have built it in the class path. Okay. Now this step, registration of driver and creating connection, is not required. Okay, we need not to I'll remove this. This step is not required. The registration of driver, all this stuff is not required. Okay, if you want to get a connection object, just what we'll do is we'll create a object to data source. Once we created the object to the data source, these data sources are used to maintain the connections and transactions. Okay, using Java application, if you want to perform some database transactions, the database connections and the corresponding transactions will be maintained by the data sources. Okay, data sources are the objects that are used to maintain the connections and transactions using the Java application. These are data sources are the objects that are used to maintain the connections and transactions. Simply database interactions. Okay, data sources are used to maintain the database interactions. From a Java application. And javax.sql.data source is the supermost entity in the data sources. There might be any data sources. The supermost entity of data sources is javax.sql.data source. And DBCB data source will provide its own implementation of data source. C3PO will provide its own implementation of data source. But the base interface is the same. C3P0 will implement that interface in one way, and DBCP will implement that interface in another way. Okay, see, base interface is data source, and the third party softwares like DBCP or C3PO are implementation of the data source system. So, but C3PO implements data source in some way, and DBCP implements data source in some other way. The logic of creating connection, managing the transactions is different for different third-party libraries. But each and every third-party library has its own advantages and disadvantages. We need not to go in depth regarding them. Okay, but keep in mind that this is the parent for all the data sources. javax.sql.data source is a parent for all the data sources. Okay, so we create a data source object. We'll set the properties like driver class, user, password, JDBC URL, minimum pool size, as a driver. Let me give all the values. The URL is the username is system, password is you, the driver class is oracle.jdbc driver.oracle driver. Minimum pool size, let me make it as 5. Maximum pool size is 10. So once we have a data source, just from the data source we will call the connection. Okay, and once we go for the finally block. Okay, and just once the transaction is over, automatically this connection will be acquired by the data source. Once the transaction is over, okay, automatically this connection will be acquired by the data source and it will keep in the pool. So we need not to do anything, just automatically it will be acquired into the pool. Okay. So now let me compile and execute this application. Just we create a combo pool data source which is a C3PO class which is used as a data source, and we'll set all the properties. What is the username? What is the driver class? What is the password? What is the URL? Minimum pool size, maximum pool size. All the properties will be set into the object and we'll get the connection object. That's it. Okay, and we'll make the remaining JDBC operations. Let me try to compile this application. Okay, this is a checked exception raised by property veto exception is a checked exception which is raised by the specific method. For the driver clicks. Okay, now let me compile the application. Compile, go to the classes, execute the application. Now, if you see here, just I am fetching the connection from the database and I am executing the application. Okay, and system.getString of 3. What I am doing is I am executing update person age. Okay, and I am making let's see what is here. Update as person age contains 3 parameters. 1 is in, 2 is in, and 3 is out. I am updating the values. I am getting the name what I have updated, and it is printing the exact name. Understand? So the yesterday's JDBC application itself, I am executing that through a connection object that is retrieved from the database. That's it. Okay. But in general, in real-time applications, we won't do this programmatically. We won't create the combo pool connection data source, and we won't create the data sources programmatically. We configure them through XML files. Okay, but we have not yet come to that stage, so I am demonstrating a simple example like this. Okay, but whatever the properties, user name or password or URL or minimum pool size or maximum pool size, these will be set as a properties in XML file. Okay, but as a simple example, I am telling this how to make use of data sources. To demonstrate a simple data source example, I am telling this, but in a real-time, in a practical application, we configure them using XML files. We configure everything. Okay, we configure the data source and we configure everything, but we configure them through XML files, not in the Java application. But I am setting in the Java application just because it is a very basic example of data source. In the coming days, when we discuss Hibernate, We'll see how we can configure them through XML files. Okay, at present, just note down this example. Okay, how to make use of a data source. Just we'll create a data source object. Okay, and we set the values for the data source. Okay, and we execute git connection method of the data source. That's it. Create a data source, set the database properties to the data source, and execute the git connection method of the data source so that it will give a connection object. And it has the pooling properties, like what is the minimum pool size and what is the maximum pool size. We need not to write any logic to maintain the pool of connections. The third party software C3PO itself will maintain the connections. And if you want, you can write the package structure also first. These two are the additional import statements that we have. These two are the additional import statements that we have. Okay. These things are not required. Just because already we have the things, just write from here to here. That's enough. Is it over? Now, let me discuss the last concept in JDBC, that is handling clob and blob data types. In general, like these clob and blob data types are used to persist the file system into the database. If you want to save a file into the database, let's consider like if you go for Naukri or Monster set, you will upload your resume and your resume will be saved with their database. And how that file will be saved in the database means they will use some data type, either blob or clob. If you upload your photo in some sites, websites, your photo will be persisted. Let's consider like you are going for any passport or Aadhaar card or PAN card. Okay, your photo will be there in their database. Okay, how your photo will be saved in the database? They will use blob data type. So, in order to persist a file system into database, we use this clob and blob data types. Clob means character large object. Character large object, and blob means binary large object. Okay. Now let me add a new column, two new columns into the existing SQL. Now Is it possible to have image in a character format? Is it possible to have image as a character file? No, image will not be a character file. As we discussed in the file system, images, PDFs, all these things are binary files, not character files. The text files, the Word document, these are character files. Okay, what we store in text pad or Word pad, these are character files. But the images or PDFs, all these are binary files. So there are table. Now there are 5 columns in the table. Okay, person profile which is of clob and person image which is of blob. Okay, now this blob and clob cannot be displayed in SQL plus. So the records exist, but what happens is this blob and clob data types cannot be displayed in SQL plus. We need to go for some graphical editors. We have several GUIs, graphical user interfaces. Graphical user interfaces. There are several GUI products available in the market. Okay, to view the information in the database. Those GUIs, there are several popular GUIs like Toad, SQL Developer, and Squirrel. There are several things. There are several products available in the market. I don't tell that these are known to me. There are hundreds of database GUI products available in the market. But some of the products that I am telling, SQL Yog. Okay, these are some of the GUI products available in the market. SQL Developer is a Oracle developer product, so it can be used only for Oracle. But Toad is the mostly used by database administrators. But it is a licensed one. Okay, it's not a freeware, it's a licensed software. So, in general, for development purposes, we use SQL Developer. Just because it is, if the Oracle is a database, then we use SQL Developer. Okay, just because this SQL Developer is a open source software which can be downloaded from Oracle side. Just what we need to do is we need to register. We need to have a free registration with Oracle, and we can download SQL Developer. That's it. Okay. So for development purposes, we use SQL Developer, or SQL Yog also is a free software. Okay. And we have used it a little bit, and let me write a simple example, okay, which demonstrates the usage of blob and clob data types. Okay, now let me try to insert the data into the blob data type. Once we got the connection, let me insert some values into h1_person. Insert into h1_person values. How many columns are there now? 5 columns are there. First is a int. Let me give there are 5 columns, so I have kept 5 placeholders. Okay. I'll use prepare statement. That's what I said. Prepare statement dot. What is the first values? ID. Let me. What are the values? Okay. Hundred, 200, 300 are existing. So let me give 400. ID is 400. What's the next value? What is the next place value to the placeholder? Name. Then so the name is a string. So set string. Third is age. So int of and fourth is a clob. Okay, fourth is a clob, character large object. To set some values to character large object, okay, we use set I'm not sure about this method, please don't write. At the fourth position, let me go for E files test hello.txt. Is there any content in the file? Yes, there is some content in the file. Let me go for this file. So let me create the file. Okay. Let me throw a exception. So it will be handled. Rather than making it try catch and complexing this, I'll throw the above exception. So that whenever above exception occurs, it will be thrown. Okay. Let me see first this whether it will be compiled or not, or are there any compile issues. Illegal escape character. Sorry, it's a backslash. Let me give forward slash. Either we should give 2 backslashes or a single forward slash. Let me import these entities, buffer reader, file reader. Sorry. Is there an IO package? Even IO exception is imported, is supposed to be imported. STMT is not there. Prepare STMT. So please prepare STMT. Reader to buffer reader. So we should not keep buffer readers, only normal readers can be kept. So let me keep a file reader. Sorry. Comma. Let me do it, and we should provide even the length also. What is the length of the file? Okay, just what I am doing is I am creating a buffer reader and on top of a file reader. Okay, all of you, I hope at least some of you remember what is readers. Okay, we have a file reader, on top of a file reader we have a buffer reader. Okay, and by using the buffer reader at the fourth index I am setting the buffer reader and the length of the file. Okay, and if you want to insert some character stream, if you want to insert some characters or clob files, character files, then we use the clob data type, and there are many ways. Okay, this is not the ultimate way of inserting a clob, a file of clob data type. There are many ways, but this is a simpler way. This is a very simpler way of inserting a clob type into the database. Okay, so now what we do is just go for a reader, go for a file reader or buffer reader, whatever it might be. Go for a reader, just set the reader as second argument, set the length as a third argument. That's it. Okay, and in the same way, input stream. For character files we can use readers and writers, but for binary files we should use streams. For character files we use readers and writers. In the same way, for binary files, for images or PDF files we use streams. Okay, that's why I used to tell to practice the examples. If you just listen and if you have your examples in your notes, it's of no use. They should be in your mind. Whenever I ask, even I ask you at midnight 11:30, you should tell. Even if you are asleep and if I make you awake and if I ask you the same question, you should be in a position to tell the answer. That should be your levels of practicing. This is not the correct way. So, just in case of character files, we can render the character files using readers. and we can write the data into character files using writers. In the same way, we can read the character files information using input streams, and we can put the data into character files using output stream. So let me do this. Let me do a output stream. I'm creating a file output stream, and I'm creating a buffer output stream on top of a file output stream where I'm inserting the image. Image.jpg. Let me replace all backslashes with forward slashes. Just because in file system, either we can give 2 backslashes or 1 forward slash. Okay, see what we have done is, just let me, this is what we have done. Okay, now we created a buffer reader on top of a file reader which represents a file. We have created a buffer, sorry, it's not output stream, it should be input stream. We created a buffer input stream on top of a file input stream. Okay, let me import these entities, buffer input stream and file input stream. Okay, we have created buffer reader and buffer input stream. Buffer reader is file readers, any reader, file reader or buffer reader will be used to read the character content, character files like text files and all. Okay, and input streams, file input stream or buffer input stream, they are used to read the data from binary files like image files, PDF files and all. Okay, now first we need to create a file reader. On top of a file reader we create a buffer reader. In the same way, file input stream, on top of a file input stream we will create a buffer input stream. And just what we do is, just for continuity I am writing like this. Okay, for better visibility for you I am writing like this. Now, to insert a blob type, we go for set binary string. At the 5th position, buffered input stream. We will create a buffered input stream and the size. Length of the buffer input stream. Understood? In case of clob files, we go for set character string. For binary files, we go for set binary string. Understood? Just for character files, we go for buffer reader. Okay? For character files, we go for buffer reader. Okay, and we create a buffer reader on top of a file reader which contains a file. In the same way, for binary files we go for buffered input stream which is created on top of a file input stream which takes the file. Okay, now let me ask this question, like, can I use set binary stream for character files? Can I use set binary stream method, or can I use buffered input stream for character files? Can I use buffered input stream to interact with character files? Yes or no? Yes. Buffer input streams. Streams can be used to interact both with character data as well as non-character data. Streams can be used to interact both with character files as well as non-character files. But readers and writers, they can be used only to interact with character files but not binary files. But streams can be used to interact both with character files as well as binary files. Okay, so such binary stream can be used for both character files as well as binary files. But in general, we go for readers and writers for character files and streams for binary files. Okay? Okay, let's go here to compile application. Something is missing. Parentheses. Link is not there. Pressing. So, let me see file name. So what I'll do is, so I need to give the length of the file. So first I'll create a file object. There is no length method in the buffer reader. Let me create a file object. And we'll create on top of the file object. Since there is no length method in the readers as well as streams, we go in this approach. Okay, first I'll create a file. I'll create a buffer reader on top of file reader on top of a file. Okay, and I'll give the buffer reader as second argument and text file length as the third argument. In the same way, I'll go for image file and I'll create a buffer input stream on top of a file input stream on top of a image file, and I'll give the buffer input stream and the length of the file. File is a class that doesn't exist, so let me import that. So it was being imported. Okay, the length of the file is long, so let me concise that into integer. The return type of length method in a file system is long, so I am concising that into integer. Okay, now it was compiled. Go to the classes. Execute application. Okay. the application was successful just because there are no errors. Now, let me explain this example. This is one of the approach. I don't tell that this is the best approach or this is the worst approach, but this is one of the approaches to insert some data into the clob files or blob file, into the clob or blob columns. But yes, there might be other approaches also. You can search in Google for other approaches. I found that this is a better, easy approach to insert data into the binary files or character files. Okay. First, what we do is we create a file reader. Okay. Create a buffer reader on top of file reader on top of a file, and execute set character stream by passing the position, okay, and the buffer reader, or even you can directly give a file reader also, okay, and the length of the file, which is typecasted into integer, okay. And the same way for a binary files, we'll go for set binary stream, just the position, the the buffer input stream reference, and then the length of the file. Okay, this is the approach. This is one of the approaches. Okay, how we can insert some data into clob as well as blob columns using JDBC application. Okay, and if you want to get the data, let me write a simple application. Okay, just first write this, then after we'll see how to read that data. These two lines are continuous, but for better visibility I have written separate lines. Even these two lines are continuous, for better visibility I have written separate lines. Just you write only this. This is enough. Just write 5 placeholders. Insert into h1 score % values 5 placeholders, 5 question marks. Okay, and from here you can write. See, this e files test hello.txt, this will not be saved in the database. The content of the file will be saved in the database. The path will not be saved in the database. The file path. From that file it will read the content and it will save the content into the database.